We'll still get a few more coming here soon, but we'll get started with just some of the housekeeping things in the beginning before we get into our presentation. So we're glad you have all joined us. We'll be talking about how to access capital, what the different options are, what all of that looks like today. I'm Hannah Curtis. I'm with the North Metro Small Business Development Center. For any of you who are not familiar with the SBDC, we help small businesses start and grow and equip them with whatever questions they have, whatever resources they need. We are located in Westminster, but we cover a lot of the North Metro Denver area. So Broomfield, Arvada, Commerce City, Brighton, of course, Westminster, that whole area. And this session is actually sponsored by the City of Westminster. We want to give a big shout out to them. They're fantastic partners. We love working with them, and they have so many resources for small businesses, specifically in Westminster. I'll put their website to their economic development department in the chat here. They have a bunch of great events coming up and resources to support them. So they are great. Thanks to the City of Westminster. So today's session is presented by Karen Patel. She is one of our lead consultants. She has so much information and experience, so we're so thankful to have her with us. And if you do have questions while we're going through it, you can put those into the chat. We'll do, the way this will be structured is we'll give you the information up front. Karen will take us through some of these slides, and then we'll have time for discussion and questions at the end. So if you have questions while Karen's presenting, feel free to put them into the chat, either to everyone, or if it's more of a specific question, you can direct it directly to me. And then at the end, we can have more of a discussion. You'll all be welcome to come off mute, and it can be interactive in that way. If you do have very specific questions, we also encourage you to schedule an appointment with our consultants. I'll put our consulting link into the chat here in a minute as well. But that's a great time to just do one-on-one sessions. It's completely confidential and completely free with one of our business consultants to walk through whatever situation you're going through with your business. So with that, I think we are all set. So Karen, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, so it looks like I'm the keeper of the admitting people in. So,
oh, I am also that. So don't worry about that, Karen.
Oh, okay, good. Because it was popping up and I was like, oh no. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Tuesday and a little bit of snowstorm here. I'm excited to be here. Thanks to City of Westminster. They have like 3,000 registered licensed businesses. So, great that they understand supporting the entrepreneurs and small business is so critical to their economy. I will say also thank you for registering. About half of you are startups and half of you are existing, with also some expansion. So that's exciting. I guess we'll just start, and I do recognize some names. So some of you might have heard some of this, but I'm happy to hear some other thoughts you have. So, well, let's see, are we going to advance? See, very first challenge here. There we go. A little bit about me. Let's just say I've been in the financial services industry for about 40 years. Okay, so I was raised in a family-owned business, construction, by the way. So I know there's a couple of you in the real estate construction world. And of course, having an accounting degree, numbers are kind of my thing, but also in the financial services. But as much as it's a major part, it's not everything. I have been in the corporate side. I have economic development background and day-to-day now as a financial consultant, and very pleased with being part of the SBDC. When I was a banker, I often would refer business owners like yourself to the SBDC. So it's fun to be on the other side, and I know what I could and can't say. And since I'm a consultant, I can share the realities of what's going on. So congratulations. You are part of the American dream, being an entrepreneur. Either half of you are already there. The other half, you're thinking about it or want to be. So welcome, and let's go for the gusto. So the big thing is you figured out you don't either have enough money, or strategically you want to figure out what's the best way to get money, how to structure things, but you need whatever, however you want to call it, big bucks, moolah, dollars. It's called green stuff, right? So you figured out you needed it. Today, we're going to follow sort of a structure. So I will get into answering these three type of questions. What type of funding's out there? What's best for your small business? And of course, how do you execute? How do you actually get the green stuff, right? A lot of people don't realize, and this is really more for the startups. So those of you with existing businesses, you already know this, but for startups, the first place you need to look at your own pockets. What's cash? What kind of savings? Personal credit, depending, a lot of times business owners will start there because it's the easiest. You might take out money from your retirement accounts, assuming you worked in the corporate and now want to jump into the entrepreneurial world. Some of you might have a life insurance contract where you can get cash value and borrow from there. A lot of business owners, when banks really tightened up on credit, that cash value life insurance policy really saved many people. I have some clients that really saved. Also, home equity. Not that that's what you want to do, but it's yourself. But if you're not willing to put in your own type of money, why the heck should anybody else? So you need to look at your own finances first. And of course, then there's family and friends. It's kind of self-explanatory. The expectations, they might just want to help you. You tell them about your business. Requirements aren't going to be there, but sometimes the family vibes, you just don't want to go there. You really want to separate family and friends and keep business as business. Yes, there's government resources, and often with startups, so often when I've talked with somebody, they want to know what grants are out there, what free money. Going back to the self, if you're not willing to put in money, yes, there can be grants depending on all sorts of requirements, industries, and it could be there. But if you're going into starting a business thinking you're going to do it with grants, you might want to reconsider. So one of the things cities and counties, a lot of business owners don't realize, in your backyard, your cities and counties might have a revolving loan fund. And this is where they're using tax dollars to help businesses. And sometimes there's incubators, accelerators to help businesses. It could be that some industries have a niche industry, and so they really want to try to get existing businesses, suppliers, and build that up. And it can be anywhere from $5,000 to help you with rent, lease payments, TIs, which are tenant improvements. So sometimes your own city or county economic development department. So check that out depending where your business might be located. And then of course, SBA guarantees often can have a private sector lender, first tier bank, second tier bank. They might be on the edge of will they or will they not lend you money? But if they have that SBA guarantee, that if for some reason, God forbid, you defaulted, the bank would be made whole with that SBA guarantee. So there are, and there's some other ones, and I'm happy to talk about those if somebody has questions. Your own industry can also be a source of funding. Let's say you need to buy a new CNC machine, or you need some new equipment, printer, 3D laser, whatever. Sometimes the company you're purchasing it from can give you terms. So you might buy basic supplies, inventory, and they'll give you 30-day terms rather than you having to pay cash up front. Well, whatever product or service you're selling, if you sell it today and basically your inventory turnover is, let's say, 10 days. Well, heck, if you have the money today and you don't have to pay that creditor for 30 days, you should be getting in the cash flow in 10, or maybe they'll give you 60 or 90 days, especially if you're expanding and you've got experience with that creditor. They know that you're going to be buying more product, more widgets, more stuff from them. So it benefits them by giving you some credit. Convenience, easy, might not always be the best interest rate, however, but convenient, easy kinds of things. So looking at your own industry or your own industry association that you might be part of, sometimes they have those resources. And then, of course, outside investors, which, Shark Tank, that's kind of the extreme, but angel investors, where outside of family and friends, it might be a retired executive in the aerospace industry, or someone who wants to help minority business owners or what have you. However, again, let's say I'm an angel investor and I'm going to give you some money, but I'm a business owner, so I want something in return. And I'm sure you've seen on Shark Tank, they either will want a % ownership, but also with outside investors, they aren't going to necessarily be as patient that a financial lending institution or a government might be as far as when you pay them back. Because keep in mind, this is all about when are they going to get paid back. So I'm just remembering, 5-10 years ago, you could get an outside investor and they'd be willing to give you $500,000 at 10% interest of the company, or maybe 5%, but then a 12% interest, and you can pay them back over 18 months to 2 years. In this economy with liquidity and how things are so volatile, they might still be willing to give you that $500,000, but they want to get a portion of their money back in 6 to 9 months. They want to see what are your projections that you're going to be able to do that. More importantly, you need to know, are you going to be able to pay them back? Because if not, there's penalties, or they're going to now own a larger portion of your company. So outside investors, I'm not even going to get into the big world of venture capitalists. Yeah, if and when you go there, you definitely need advisors to help you get through that. So, and then of course, the last one, lending institutions. And I'm not going to list, this bank is good or this bank isn't, but keep in mind, banks are businesses just like you are, and they make their profits by charging you interest. And they have their revenue, they have their expenses that they pay to their depositors. And yes, they need to make a profit just like you do. So your first tier lenders, if you've never heard that before, first tier are your national, international banks, your Chase, your Bank of America. Your second tier generally will be regional banks, community banks, and they, because you are in their backyard, might be more willing to take a little bit of a risk versus first tier bank. You know, granted, small business is anybody with 500 or less employees, but they have big boys and girls that they lend to, and they're not in the business of taking risk. They're in the business, again, of making money. So first tier banks all around, that's the ultimate source of credit when you get to that level, and it's called being bankable. And so there's also nonprofit lenders. And so with alternative lenders, we have some good relationships. There's Colorado Enterprise Fund, Dream Spring, which used to be called, oh heck, what did they used to be called? Axion or something, and they've changed. And then now Colorado Lending Source, they just this year rebranded, and they're called B-Side Capital and B-Side Fund. But even with alternative lenders, as much as from a nonprofit standpoint, they want to help you and really encourage entrepreneurism, small business. In some cases, you have to technically be declined from a bank before they will even look at you. Other ones, again, just different requirements of what they may or may not offer. One of the things with lending institutions, and I can say this now that I'm on the other side, banks generally want, and especially if you have a lending relationship, they want all of your business with them. But if you're startup or you're still in the midst of trying to figure out who's the best or whatever, I really recommend you have two banking relationships, whether one's business, one's personal, because again, I've been on that side where one day somebody would come in and say, Karen, I want to borrow $500,000. Today I could do it, but the bank's credit administration changed and said, now this industry, we have enough of those, we don't want to lend anymore, or the industry is kind of risky right now, so we don't want to lend to them anymore. And so if you have all your eggs in one basket with this bank and they decide they're not in the lending mode, you need a backup. And so having that relationship with the bank, knowing who you are, definitely will help you, because it'll give them the comfort level of who are you as a person, who are you as a business owner. They can see your cash flow coming in and out. So happy to answer more questions specifically on who, where, when. But these basically are your 6 lending sources for you to kind of look at. Either you're starting your business, or perhaps if you're expanding and need some other sources. But what it comes down to, and you should really know this already, what is your business plan? And it doesn't matter if you're a startup or if you're existing. You should know these. You probably are continuously, you need to be flexible, and especially with all the pandemic recently, you've had to be able to be flexible enough to find different distribution channels or what have you. But for the existing business owners in the room, if you can kind of bear with us for just a few minutes, I want to help those who are thinking they want to start a business. You think you have a product or service. You're passionate about it. You think everybody in the world, but you need to know, what is it exactly that you're going to provide that somebody's going to write a check for you, to you, for that product, for that service. And once you know that product or service, or you think you do, who's your target market? What's your niche market? If you think you want to sell this glass to these, to America, and that's another thing, are you going domestic or international? But you want to sell this glass. Well, maybe there's, I don't know, those of you who've talked with me before know I'm kind of creative. Maybe there's people that are colorblind and couldn't see because this is clear. Well, that won't be. Or maybe people, your product is a modified glass for those with disabilities, so they can drink themselves. So again, your target market, what's your niche? What makes your business better than somebody else coming back that they're willing to pay for it? Existing business owners, and distribution channels, especially those who have had supply chains that are international. You definitely have, hats off to you for really having to find new resources. Part of your distribution channel is, do you know them? Are they part of an industry? You go to industry associations, and so you know that the product or service you have, primarily product, you know that they're going to deliver it. But let's say you are going to focus on an international supply chain. Now your banker, your lender, you might need import-export letters of credit because you don't know this company over there. You don't know the freight forwarder who's going to get your product. You manufacture it in Mexico. You need to get it to the States. What do you have to go through to get there? And of course, cash flow. And you will understand at the end of this, I hope. Remember what I said about banks? Family and friends might not want to get paid back. They might love you and feel that, they're happy to give you this or invest, and you can pay them back whenever. But if you get into investors, lenders, government, you have got to have cash flow projections based on your product or service. What is your best case scenario? What is your worst case scenario? And so dealing with whatever financial professionals helping you, your bookkeeper, your enrolled agent, also known as an EA, your CPA, because when you go to ask for money, they want to know that your cash flow, the projections are going to be there for what? So you can pay them back. And granted, again, I'm coming from the financial world, but that's what lenders are looking at. The other thing is, one of the things that the SBDC has, which I think is phenomenal, are the IBIS reports. Those of you who might have worked with me a little bit, I've tried to get some of those to you. And it's great intel on your industry as to, is your industry, looking to grow by 3.7%, or is it going to shrink by 1.5%? What are the expected cost of goods sold margin? If your cost of goods sold is, let's say, 40% and the industry standard is 28, that lender's going to come back and say, well, why aren't you efficient with your expenses? You should be industry standard. However, if your product or service is such that it adds extra value, customization, there's some explanation as to why your cost of goods is higher. Okay, And let me tell you, that lender will know your industry. And if maybe they don't, it's your job to let them know why your projections are such. So marketing, how are you going to get your customers to find your product or service and buy? I think retail, a lot of it is social media, but if you're not in the retail space, how do you get your clients to choose you versus somebody else? Do you have relationships with some associations? Do you have a referral network? And this is even, I don't know, as a plumber, or, do you talk with real estate agents? Because when somebody buys a new home, they need a new plumber, HVAC. What else did I need? I need my trash, things like that. What's the service product you are offering, and who's coming back? The last thing I'm going to do, and maybe we can jump in for a couple of questions, Hannah. Again, for startup, great to have this product and service, but where you really need to start after you have this idea, what is your legal structure? What is your accounting structure going to be? Generally, legal comes down to protecting you as a business owner. In America, if somebody doesn't like something, they're going to come back and sue you. So you want to be able to protect your personal assets, your personal estate, your family assets, sole proprietor, LLC, subchapter S, corporation. So sole proprietor, you really don't have any liability protection. The other ones you do. But then the next step is, what is your accounting structure? Because in America, as a capitalistic society, we get to pay tax. And so maybe as a legal structure, are you going to be a partnership? Are you going to be 3 of you are going to own? And anybody who owns more than 20% in a company will be required to sign on the dotted line for any lender other than maybe family and friends. Everybody else. So there might be some reason why you structure someone with an 18% ownership. Maybe because they have bad credit, maybe they're just a family member who's giving you money and they're not really part of it. But the magic number is 20%. If you have over 20%, guess what? You are part of the business ownership. Accounting, again, what's you're in business. Why? To make money. Maybe you're a nonprofit, but nonprofits can make money as well. Their tax structure is just differently, and how they're ranked, rated for, again, a lender to lend money to profit or nonprofit. So I know that's a lot of information real quick. I really wanted to keep this more to a half hour so we could answer questions and things like that. Hannah, are there some questions that we want to bring up?
Question in here from Seth, and his business is plumbing and mechanical contractors. They've been in business since 2019 and have seen a lot of growth, but they want to continue to grow and are, seeing that the need for working capital is there. Do you have any recommendations like to continue that growth? Most of he says 80% of their business is commercial construction, and he was specifically wondering about government resources that maybe they could tap into.
Yeah. So one thing I want to talk about growth. As when I was a lender, somebody who grows too quickly, it can be just as damaging or more if you don't have your cash flow support systems there to help that growth. So if you start taking on more contracts, Now you have customers out there that are waiting for you, you know, for the guys and gals to show up on the job. It's all depending if you're dealing with developers or whoever the development is, you know, they get funded by their cost of completion. And accounting in the construction world is very different than the rest of us. So growth, make sure you have your horse's reins on them. It's so exciting, but if you don't have that cash flow to support it, it can be dangerous. So the one area where government funding could potentially help you and open up a whole nother avenue is if you actually get yourself in the circle with government procurement, city, county, federal, there are laws that require anywhere from 20 to 25% of all government contracts have to be given to minority. In this case, I don't know if you have minority ownership or not, has to be at least 51%. But you get from a government funding, you could be in a whole nother avenue to get business, but it's not going to help you buy the truck. It's not going to help you to buy the equipment, but having government contracts, because generally governments don't default, that lender's going to say, oh, you have a contract with Adams County for, I don't know, $300,000. Then the lender's going to say, hey, that's an account receivable that we feel pretty confident you're going to get paid. Government always takes so long. So you've got to have your cash flow over here to pay your employees and everything else. But just because you're a plumber, just because you're a contractor, that's going to be more important to find a lender who likes contractors and who understands that business and might be more willing to lend to you versus a lender who just says, you know, I'm staying away from construction altogether.
Great, thank you, Karen. That's really helpful. And Stephanie, who's on the call with us today from the City of Westminster, also put in the chat her email there. So you can reach out to her. She mentions that the City of Westminster does have some small business grants, generally up to $5,000. And they can kind of walk you through what that process looks like. So some other resources there as well. And Gary has a great question. Is there a special process or application we go through to get an SBA guaranteed loan, or is that something the bank will take care of?
Yeah, generally the bank, and it's not like you can go and say, hey, I want, well, it depends, but generally it's the lender that has that relationship. But there are some alternative lenders that could, but it starts with this business plan. And if I may, Hannah, let's go to this next area, because I can kind of answer the question on the SBA with the fifth area. You may or may not have heard about the 5 C's. Capital, we've already talked about, the lower left corner. You know, what skin have you put in the game? If you haven't put in anything, other lenders, even government, some of the programs require you to put in 10%. So if you know you need $75,000, where are you going to find 7,500? What's your capital? What's your equity? They may or may not ask for collateral. Depends on what it is. Of course, if you're purchasing real estate, they will take a first deed position. Sometimes you don't have, because your product is a service and you might not have anything tangible. Sometimes it'll be a personal guarantee. You never know. The third C is conditions. What's the industry? Construction is gangbusters. You know, restaurants right now, because of the pandemic, Restaurants are a whole nother avenue because it's a cash business. And so a lot of lenders don't really like that. Anyway, so that's tough, but it depends on, what is your industry. But these last two are going to be most crucial on whether or not you can get a first tier lender, even a second tier. Is who are you? It's not ABC company that's going to pay back the lender. It is you, the manager, the president, the owner, who's going to pay back. And if your FICO score, and usually I ask people, is it pretty good? Or it needs some work? Or it needs a lot of work? So I just know with some of the alternative lenders, if you have less than a 630, you need to work on your personal credit because they're just not even going to consider you. And let me just add this real quick. Lenders cannot, by regulation, if you go in, you show them your business plan, they skim through it like a resume, they can see you have negative cash flow. They cannot right then and there tell you, no, we're going to decline you. They need to go through the process and find things. But it's really frustrating as a business owner. You spend all this time and everything else. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody would tell you so you wouldn't spend so much more time and figure out what you do need to work on? But it's your past credit experience, which again is going to show, have you paid other people? So then that lender is going to say, oh, they've paid other people on the ups and downs of life. Chances are they'll pay me as well. FICO is consumer. Dun & Bradstreet is on a business angle. Those of you in existing businesses, you may or may not want to pay to submit your financials and things to get a Dun & Bradstreet score. Depends on your industry, depends on your lending relationship or who you have. I'm happy to talk specifics with that. And then the last one, your capacity, your ability to pay back. So maybe you have a good product, you have some good projections, maybe you have experience in your previous life, corporate life, but because you're a startup, all the other boxes are checked. But because you're a startup, the lender might say, you know what, we really like this, but let me bring in an SBA guarantee. And that's where everybody in the family's happy because the lender's going to get paid back because they have a guarantee. And that lender's willing to take that risk to actually lend you the money. So it was a really long way to answer that question about the SBA loans. But I wouldn't count on SBA up front. Get some advice, get your business plan together, figure out, do your own industry evaluation. And that's where we can talk about things. The one thing I do want to mention, as much as I like to think in my day job, I'm the most important advisor with my clients. It is your CPA. No ifs, ands, or buts. They're the ones that are going to get your financials together because without the lender seeing good financials and cash flow, you won't even get to go past go to collect $200 to even be considered for an SBA loan. So like your CPA, send chocolate, send often. Anything else, Hannah, we want to chat about before we go into this? I'm finishing up. I just have two more, the last two questions to answer.
No, I think we can keep going ahead. I do want to actually just jump in real quick for not exactly a question, but several of you are named Hannah Curtis. It's a little fluke we're having today with Zoom. So if you see that your little screen is not your name, if you could right click on it and just rename it as your actual name so that we know who's on with us today, that would be really helpful. And if you do have more questions, put those in the chat, and then here in a minute we can open it up as well if you'd rather just verbally not have to type out everything. So Yes, carry on, Karen.
Wonderful. So the second question of our objectives is what's best for your business? And it's your business. It's your capital. It's your 30 hours a day, 8 days a week. It is your decision. Now, I will say having a team of advisors to help you determine what might be those best decisions for you. Absolutely. And they don't always have to cost money. One in particular, the SBDC, and maybe I'm going to do my quick little commercial here. When I was on the other side as a banker, I often would refer business owners to SBDC. And I will say that North Metro truly has, I think in my 40 plus years, really the most diverse as well as in depth. There's 3 attorneys, there's 4 or 5 marketing people, we have manufacturing, HR. So, you know, don't be afraid to ask. I mean, hats off to you for knowing that you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know, but somebody else does. And so you're here today. Hopefully this is helping you. What's best for your business also is what is the purpose for your funding request? Is it a startup? Very different than if you're an existing customer, an existing business, and TIs are tenant improvements. So let's say because of all this pandemic, you were in a 4,000 square foot facility and you need to go down to 2,500, but you know your revenues are down and you just need some money for your new location and you think it can be good. So refinancing debt that you had on a personal side that you want to make into business, it gets tricky, really tricky. That's where having your business plan up front, having your influx of capital, and the joke is, and it shouldn't be, you can get money when you don't need it, right? That's when lenders are willing to give you the money. But anyway, an expansion, have your contract, know what the costs are. And the different types of capital, I already talked a little bit about, you know, getting credit from within your industry, that they give you terms, that maybe it's just something short term that you need. If you find that you have very seasonal cash flow and that you have great revenue before the holidays and then you're down SOL until, you know, April comes or May comes. So it's okay. That's what working capital lines of credit are. One of the elements of a working capital line of credit is it's generally 1 year. And so when you're getting all this cash in, you technically, because you have all this cash flow, shouldn't need to borrow money. It should be zero, right? And so a lot of lenders, let's say you get $100,000 line of credit, after the holidays, January through May, you max out to 100,000, but there will be generally an expectation, or it's called a covenant, that you are paid to zero for 30 days. But that's when it's a working capital line of credit because it's an ongoing business. If you have long-term like real estate or your piece of equipment that should be good for 5 to 7 years, match that source of funding, and your lender should recommend this. You don't get a 2-year loan on something that is going to last you 5 years because your payments are going to be too big. It's kind of like, you know, matching it, plus with the depreciation, and that's where your CPA comes into play, can also give you that guidance. We talked a little bit about lenders, all kinds, and it depends on what fits based on your industry or what you want to do. Happy to talk some more. Really the last one, how do you get it? My daughters laugh because I have all these mantras, but I'm telling you, it's called documentation, documentation, documentation. If you don't have things written down, you don't have your projections, good, bad, or otherwise, if you haven't gone through that process, even your business plan, think about your distribution channels, marketing, what's the cost? You know, getting a website, is it $5,000, or have you done analysis that you can find for what you need? It's $3,250, or maybe you need 10 grand, but you need to have the documentation of why. Experience, just because you haven't run a business before, but if you've been in the industry for 27 years, maybe you got laid off, maybe you had enough of it and you just want to have your own control. Having that industry experience is key, is very critical. We talked about financial credit, your FICO score, got to have it. Have your team of advisors. There is so much free advice, and not just advice, it's called wisdom, meaning they've gone through it. They have the experience of what it is. And if you notice, CPA, and I know no CPAs have paid me to say that. It's just how it is in America, in a capitalistic society. So pretty much all I had. Happy to take some more questions, open it up, whatever works.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. That is so helpful. There was an interesting question here. Someone's in the firearms industry. So the question is what to do if the industry is not necessarily favorable and there aren't any traditional lending options. No one wants to lend to them. What would you suggest?
Yeah, getting back, if you recall, on that whole industry thing, similar to restaurants, where there's not a lot of lenders that will lend to restaurants because it's a cash business, never knowing if it's going someplace else. Firearms, where if you have your documentation as to a business plan, keep in mind, put your hat on. What do I need to educate that lender on the other side of the table about my industry, that they feel confident that you've put in the time, you know your industry, you know your competition. What makes you better? Why is your pricing at this? There are lenders out there. Cannabis is the only one that's really tough because federally it is still illegal. And because banks are part of the Federal Reserve System, they're not able to lend for the purpose of cannabis. Now, if you happen to have some investment real estate and you have some other things and they give you a business line loan and a creative lender can do that, there's ways around it. Happy to talk with whoever that is. But look at your industry. Who's out there? And again, what's your purpose? Why do you need the money?
Great, thank you. Hope that clears that up. For any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can also come off mute and ask your question. Oh, here is a new one. This question says, I'm a tier 2 lender and have clients on this call. Oh, great. I'm happy to be an advisor to anyone needing funding. No pressure for sales. Her contact information is in there. So fantastic. Thank you, Cinnamon, for sharing that. Other questions, like I said, feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to come off mute. We still have a few minutes here for anyone who does need to ask some questions. And I did put the links for our scheduling page if you want to schedule a one-on-one consultation with any of our consultants. And I also put Karen's direct link in there if you want to specifically talk with Karen about some of these more specific questions you might have.
Hey, Karen, this is Seth with Everest Mechanical.
Hi.
Hi. So the question was, since you also have a construction background yourself, what are lenders looking for, and what's the best route to go to in terms of working capital and specifically for this industry?
Well, I guess my question back to you, Seth, is what do you need money for?
Primarily for working capital and yeah, primarily for working capital. Work is not a problem.
Working capital because you have contracts and you're not going to get paid for 9 months out and you got to pay for your employees today?
Not 9 months out. They're usually, I mean, on the contract is 30 to 45 days, but in reality, when the payments come in, it becomes like perhaps 60 days, maybe 70 days, you know? And
Okay.
then, so it's a more of a cyclical thing than anything
Yep.
else.
Okay, so it's kind of the chicken and the egg.
Right.
General lenders, again, if your credit is good, you've been in business more than 2 years, any general lender, if you can show your financials that so in this case, it's not, you know, today you don't have money and then you get paid and you have lots of money. That's why financial statements are on a fiscal year, 12 months, because there is that cyclical aspect to businesses. So, and of course, this year still, so many industries are, you know, the financials from 2021, 2020 just sucked. It's tough. So lenders know that. And that's where, when I showed what is your personal credit, how are you structured, what's your experience, you don't have to have a business plan and write all of this out. Though if you're a startup, you absolutely do. SBA lenders, if a bank declines you and they say only, and they go to an SBA lender and it comes together, you will have to have that business plan. But for an existing business, make sure you've got good bios. You are selling yourself, Seth, or if you're the sole owner or other people, you know, who are the people that are going to write the check to pay back? You know, do you have your masters? Are you a PE? Are all 3 officers? Maybe there's only 1 owner, but all 3 executive officers, you know, PE, masters, and, you know, whatever other letters after your name. You know your industry. So that right there brings up your credibility that other people will hire you to do that business versus if you're just, you know, you don't have that experience. Happy to talk to you, you know, offline. Hopefully I've answered that sort of okay.
You've whetted my appetite, let's just say.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, good.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Again, feel free to shoot those over or schedule employment. You can always talk about them after the fact. I know sometimes in the moment you don't have questions and then we hop off and all the questions come. So we're always here. Again, they're free appointments and most of them are happening virtually. So just a Zoom call. So really easy to get on board with that. Anything else, Karen, that you want to, any wise words you want to leave our attendees with?
You know, as a business owner, you need to be resourceful. And I don't know any successful business owners that got where they got by themselves. So, you know, if you are a business within city of Westminster, oh my goodness, I mean, they already are waving the flag that they get it and they're here to support you. The SBDC, there's 10 or 15 in the state, but I know they've laxed some of the rules that if you lived outside of our territory, we couldn't talk to you. That's not the case anymore. Ask for help. If you don't have a CPA, ask your banker who they like. Ask whoever, you know, we can make some referrals. But you don't have to know everything, but find advisors who can help you and give you that wisdom. Because at the end of the day, this is your business, your life, you're feeding your family, that of your employees, and just have a plan, but know we're here to help you and support you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Karen. And thank you for all of this helpful information. I will be sending out the recording of today's session, as well as the slides that Karen put together to everyone probably tomorrow, once everything's actually processed and together. But like Karen said, please reach out for help. The SBDC is here, City of Westminster is here, and we want to resource you and support you. So thank you all so much for joining, and thank you so much, Karen. Thank you, City of Westminster, and we hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck. Welcome to being an entrepreneur.